What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Masculine Health Solutions podcast, where we are blessed to have Dr. Dean Sunseri on to talk again on the importance of taking care of your marriage, and a lot of key points and a lot of things that we may overlook because sometimes we're just busy, and sometimes as men we try to fix things in the ways that make the most logical sense, and sometimes it doesn't always pan out in the way that we would like. And we're just here to talk to an expert who's going to clarify these different things. And Dr. Dean, that is you, my friend. So can't wait to have this conversation. I can't wait for you to basically give us the insight and lowdown and how to really make these marriages work. But first and foremost, how are you today?
I'm doing good, man. I just got out of a couple sessions, so I'm warmed up, man.
That's perfect, man. And it's kind of interesting because in doing some research for this, and even in the last podcast where you talked about how you overcame, your own issues, what's the one thing that you feel couples just overlook initially where, if you could just go back 20 years ago, what's something that you could say, you know what, if we had just handled this years ago, it wouldn't have welled up its ugly head 10, 15 years down the road? What's one of those things that you commonly see?
Well, I find, and specifically for men, oftentimes the solutions that we often want to give are not the solutions. In a sense that it's really a different dynamic for most women. For most women, the solution is to be heard and seen, not to be given a solution.
Mm-hmm.
If there's an issue that they're struggling with, oftentimes they want to be seen and heard, and that's 90% of the solution. Where for guys, like, for example, let me give an example. Say that my wife's going down Highway 30. She's got my son in the back seat. A car almost runs her off. It's kind of a dangerous road. She almost goes into the ditch. She calls me and she's hysterical. Well, the first thing that I'm thinking of is I want her to be safe, right?
Yeah.
So I'll say, listen, honey, since Highway 30 is so dangerous, take the other road, back road. Take the other road. Now, I'm foremost one to make sure that she's safe, but that's absolutely the wrong answer.
Interesting.
It's the wrong answer. It's the wrong. I'm providing a solution, and she wants to be heard. So she's going to walk away from that conversation that's all my husband wants to do is fix me. He doesn't want to hear me. He doesn't want to hear about my experience. He doesn't want to hear that I was scared. He doesn't want to hear that we asked about our son, whether he's okay in the back seat. He don't want anything. No. This is the way to handle it. She calls me. She's upset. And I say, are you okay, honey? Yes, it was so scary. Oh, that must have been horrible. Yes, it was so scary. I almost went off the road. We could have, and Moses is in the back seat and he could have been hurt. Is he all right? Is he scared too? Yes, he was afraid. He was freaking out. And I'm just asking her questions, and she's talking about her experience, right?
Mm.
And then that's 90% of the solution. Now, my heart's good when I say take the other road, but I'm not hearing any of that. Now, after I ask her a bunch of questions and she gets it out the system, then I can say, listen, honey, next time, maybe you can take the other road because it's safer. And she's like, oh, my husband's so awesome. He's so great. But if it was two guys, right, say that happened to me, and I was telling you, CJ, I almost went off the road. You say, dude, you ought to take the other road. It's safer. Oh, that's a good idea, man. Thanks. And then we're good. We're good. You gave me the solution, and I'm good. But that's not the case. That's not the case. I mean, it took a while for me to catch on to this, but it's like my wife wants to be seen and heard more than given a solution.
It sounds so simple, but I guess it's something that we all overlook, I myself included, because it's like, your initial response is always like, how do I fix it? How do I solve it?
Yes. And that's what guys do. Like, for example, I had this couple that I saw, and, he kind of deals with his own stuff on his own. Like, he wants to withdraw, process, and then forget about it, kind of thing. And she's wanting to talk it out. Like, this is what happened. We need to talk it out. Da, 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 da. And he's like, this is the 10th time you're going through this. You want to process it another, that's in his own mind.
Yeah.
And I was trying to explain to him, I said, look, she just wants to be seen and heard. That's the solution. The solution is not to come up with the solution. The solution is to see and hear. So I had her look in her eyes, and I had she look in her eyes, and I was coaching him. I said, tell her and say her name. And he said her name. And I said, I apologize for ignoring you and not seeing you. And I see you now. And when he said, I see you now, she just started weeping. Oh, he sees me. He sees me. He sees me. And then I was looking, and I said, when you apologized to her, I said, what did you see in her eyes? He says, I see hurt. I see pain. And she's crying more, right? And by the end of the session, she was smiling. She was smiling. It's like but the key was that he doesn't see her, not because he doesn't love her. Of course he loves her. He's just like, look, quit bitching and let's get on to the solution. And she's like, I just want you to hear my bitching. And if you would hear me, I'd quit bitching. I mean, it's basically what she's
Yeah.
But once he enters into it and sort of squeezes like what she's going through out of her, and she knows that she's seen and heard, it's on. She's like, oh, my husband's awesome.
I mean, honestly, there's a lot of truth in that, because I feel as though it's very applicable to all our lives as we're listening. But why are we wired like that as far as like females versus males? Because you're right, like immediately we'll always jump out to like, solve issues. And, when you're working with other dudes, it's like, it's not offensive or anything. It's like, it just makes sense to us. Like,
makes sense.
Yeah. How come, what is it about the female wiring inside of the brain that like makes them view it from this perspective? And how come we got to approach it from there? Because like, I understand it from like a logical perspective, I guess, but it's almost, I'm curious as to what makes them wired in this way.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, I do think that part of our traditional roles have been really problem solvers, that we need to solve problems, get in there, if we're upset about it or anything, we need to put that on the side and just get in there and get it done. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a generalization, but I think that perhaps for the women, I think overall women value the relational aspect. If you say in any relationship, there's task and there's the relational quality, right? Mm-hmm. Like I was thinking about, I was being challenged the other day. I went to this men's thing, and it was like a workshop and stuff. And they were talking about how important it is to have 5 men in your life that you really feel connected to. And this is what they came up with. And that you could be accountable to, that you could turn to. And I was thinking, I said, I don't know about my list. Like, I don't have friends that are just friends. I have friends based on my activities.
Yeah.
So I work with somebody, so I might make a friend there. I might play golf and I make a friend there. But in terms of just hanging out with a friend, that's not really part of the way I do relationship for men. It's much more based on the tasks that are being. But so in a sense, you have a relationship, you have task and you have relational. And I think women value the relational aspect perhaps more than men. And so they will have relationships for the sake of relationships. It doesn't have to be based on we're mothers together or we're tennis players together or we're just friends and we like to talk, And I think there's a little different thing there. I mean, maybe it's not as much as it used to be, but I still think there's some truth to that. So in that sense, I think when your relationship's based more on task, then solutions are a lot more important. If your relationship's based on just being with each other, seeing each other is much more important.
Oof. That makes perfect sense. I mean, I got one friend that I can think of where as a male, like we just hang out with each other because we just hang out with each other, right? And
Yeah.
outside of him, there are like maybe two other guys, and the one's not even in the country right now. I really don't have a whole lot of friends that we just kind of hang out with and do whatever. But for the most part, you are right, because there are people where it's like, hey, we need to do X, Y, Z, and it's like, all right, cool. And we come together, handle the task, get it done. Or even at work where we spend 90% of the time that we're awake a lot of the times as well. It's like, hey, we work as a team, we work as a great collective, but we don't really hang out outside of work. And
Yeah.
it's not like offensive to anybody, but we don't really, outside of work, it's just like, hey, wish you all the best, and I'll see you on Monday.
Yeah. I was thinking about when I was growing up, I played a lot of sports, and a lot of my relationships were based on being on the same team, so we
Yeah.
had this task of being winners and trying to figure that out. But I mean, my best friend, Larry, we played baseball and basketball together the entire playground high school, and so, and he was my best friend, but it was based on, lots of it was based on the task of doing this activity together. So I don't know. It's kind of an interesting topic, but I do think that in terms of the quality of the relationship, it has to do with needs. If you look at the needs of a man, there's this lecture that I do on the difference between the needs of the man and the needs of the woman, and that they're different. And so, like, for example, I think the number one need for a man in general is sexual fulfillment.
The hell I agree with that.
And I say, when God told Adam to be fruitful and multiply, I don't know if Eve was there, but I know definitely Adam was there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh yeah, he was probably very much involved.
So that's usually the number one need for the man. The number one need for the woman is what I would call affection, or an affection meaning random acts of care, and for them to be noticed and seen. Like, for example, for a woman, you know how a radar, when it goes around and a plane's coming up, it blips every time it goes around.
Yeah.
It's a need for the woman to know that she's blipping on her man's radar.
Interesting. Huh.
So I could be thinking about my wife during the day, but if I don't communicate that to her, she doesn't know. And it's a need for her to know that I'm thinking about her, that she's on my mind. So for example, if I send my wife a text on the middle of my workday, hey honey, I was just thinking about you and how you doing, it's like, that's the most awesome thing. I'm seeing, I'm thinking of her. She's on my radar. Now, if she texts me during the middle of my day, like, hey honey, I was thinking about you, I'm like, can't this wait till I'm finished? I mean, to myself, right?
Yeah.
Finding right here, if you're going to disturb me, it better be for something good. And you're asking me how I'm doing?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that it doesn't mean that much to me, but it's a need for her. And so if I'm on the way home from work and I go get gas and I get her a favorite Snickers bar and I bring it home. So I spent, 75 cents. But for her, it's like, he was thinking of me. I'm on his radar. Now, what happens for a couple is that those two top needs often create a negative or positive momentum, in a sense that the negative momentum is, she never wants to have sex. She don't care. He never pays attention to me unless he wants to have sex. And yeah, but I don't pay attention to her because she never wants to give herself to me. Well, I don't want to give myself to him because he never pays attention. And so that's the negative snowball.
Yeah, I got you. That spiral, yeah.
But there's also, I want to freely give myself to my husband because he sees me and he shows me and I'm on his radar. I want her to express that she's on my radar because she freely gives herself to me. And then it creates this positive snowball. And so sometimes when couples come in, I'm just looking at those two, the top needs. Now there's 4 others, but I'm looking at those top needs and I'm saying, okay, do they have a negative momentum going there or a positive momentum going there? And it's because the needs are different. And if I don't understand my wife's needs, and needs are different than wants, right? You might want a steak, but a hamburger will do fine. But don't feed CJ for 3 or 4 days. You see a different side of him that is not there, right?
Yeah.
When a need's not met over a long period of time, the results are unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
When a want's not met, you'll still be fine. You'll still be fine. And so this is like a psychological need. And when that's not fulfilled, then it often creates a negative spiral that just entrenches in the hearts of the couple, and it becomes difficult.
Yeah. And I think it makes perfect sense because it's one of those things that you do hear about. I mean, I've kind of read different things about communication and stuff, but you basically simplified it and just gave us the essence of how to solve these issues. And you're right, that negative momentum starts from somewhere. And it seems like that is a seed that makes a lot of sense, because as soon as one doesn't receive what they truly want, then the other starts to just kind of shut down and say, well, I'm not going to give you what you want. And
exactly.
Down and down we go, right? Like it only gets worse from there until I guess somebody kind of ends up at your doorstep like, it's not working out. We love each other, but we don't know why.
Yeah. And I'm mad because he's not doing this for me, and he's mad because she's not doing this for me. And they're often different.
Mm-hmm.
They're different. Like, for example, the second need. So the second need for the man, I say, is recreational companionship. Like, it's an important need for the man, for the woman, periodically to participate in activities that he enjoys. I'm not saying we have to go hunting every weekend, but I like basketball. Every once in a while, sit down and watch some basketball with me. Like that's an important need for the man. But for the woman, the second need is communication and conversation.
Interesting.
That communication and conversation is a high need. Now, it's usually or sometimes not a high need for the man. Like, for example, if I have a rough day of work, I can come home, turn on the TV, 15 minutes, have a whole conversation in my head, think about the problem, solve it, deal with it, and never say a word.
Mm-hmm.
My wife could have the same issue at work. She comes home, she says, guess what? I said, what? Yeah, what else? And as she's talking it out, she's processing it, and I'm communicating and asking inquisitive questions. She's working it out, and it's meeting a need.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a need to talk it out with you, honey. I do it in my head while I'm watching TV. But oftentimes for a woman, she needs that conversation. So I tell a man, I said, listen, you need to every once in a while let her in on those conversations you're having in your head. And secondly, you need to ask sincerely caring questions. So, what happened today? Oh, that's horrible. Are you doing okay with it? Yeah, How did that affect y'all's relationship? And the communication and conversation, as it's being worked out, I'm meeting her need, but that's not important to me. But I need to know it's important to her. It's just like, it's easy to see if you make it like a gift, right?
Yeah.
I give her favorite flowers. That's awesome. She loves it. She gives me those same flowers. It's like,
yeah, you could think of a million different things that you'd rather have than
tickets to the Pelicans game. Okay, that's different.
They're like, yeah, I want to see Zion play. I'm like, all right, cool. I guess I don't know what I'm going to do with this.
That's right. That's right. So it's different, but sometimes relationships that are not functioning well are not because they don't love each other. It's because it's a need problem. We're not meeting each other's needs, which are different oftentimes.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't understand that, if I think her needs are the needs that I have, then it's going to miss it. We're going to miss at each other. So, this is an interesting exercise. I go through the top 5 needs of the man, the top 5 needs of the woman, and then I have them grade each other. I have them grade themselves. I say, CJ, meeting this first need for affection, what grade do you give yourself? A through F.
Interesting. Yeah, you almost put the spotlight
Like,
on people where it's like, oh, well, I give myself an 8. But there's a lot of lying going on.
but after I explained it, the guy like, C plus, man.
Yeah.
It's like, what about communication and conversation? C minus, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, as you start to go down the road.
And then and then they grade themselves first, and then I say, okay, now you need to grade your partner. And
Ooh.
and then and when they're close, at least they kind of know each other. But when he's saying I have an A and she's saying you got a D minus, it's kind of trouble. We're not on the same page.
I'd say so. But it seems like sometimes, and it's not that we're selfish or self-absorbed, but I'm speaking on behalf of most guys that are listening to this. It's almost like, because we view it from our perspective, right? It's just like, well, I should be solving this, or this sounds like it's my problem, so I should be going about it this way. And now that you've kind of clarified that more and more, it makes a lot more sense, because it's like, okay, well, I understand it, but at the same time, as you're telling me this, I can even run it back a couple of times in my life where there's been situations where it's like, as you're trying to fix it, it's like it's almost like you're pissing the other person off, and it's just kind of leading you nowhere. However, without the proper tools, it seems that, or even with the awareness, I guess that's kind of the big issue, because now that you obviously made us aware of it, now it's like, okay, cool, it's in my conscious brain. I just gotta put it into practice. But it's a lot easier said than done, because you want to react in the way that you always do to any situation, which is like, okay, how do I fix this and go about my day and not discuss it? It's tough.
Right. Well, and it's really not this. You discuss it not because it's good for what you need, but it's what's important, and you give to your partner, because when I'm seeking to fill her needs and she's seeking to fulfill my needs, it's a real good formula. Good
Yeah.
things happen.
Yeah. And as you were saying, this is like the second thing that you get people to do. How often do you see major change already by just addressing this issue? Because you talked about the momentum earlier, and I feel like with this formula, I'm pretty sure there's probably some big changes that happen the next time around that they come see you, right?
Yeah, I think the awareness is real helpful. If we're not dealing with any major breach in the relationship, this little session, it usually becomes very enlightening and very helpful for the couple. And, I give them the papers. I say, here are your grades. I want you to bring it up a grade. What do you have to do? So you're a D plus. You're a D plus. What do you have to do to become a C plus? That's what your homework is, to work on communication and conversation, going from a D plus to a C plus. What do you have to do that? And it's most people want to do what they have to do to make it better. It's like for example, it's interesting, the in terms of feeling stimulated towards my mate. Men are stimulated oftentimes by what they see.
Yeah.
And so they're stimulated by beauty. They're stimulated by the woman wanting to look good and taking care of themselves. And they say, well, that's so superficial. Look, it may be superficial, but men are stimulated by what they see.
It is what it is. Yeah.
It is what it is. And then women are often stimulated by open and honest communication, or emotional communication, heartfelt communication. So if a man strays in a relationship and you start talking to him, he says, well, she was just so hot, she looked good, and I just, went and pursued it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But woman, you say she strayed, and you say, and you start investigating. She'll often say, oh, he was so understanding, and he understood my heart, and he was communicating in such a beautiful, they're not saying he looked good, he's hot, that might be important, but it's like the Don Juan that's playing on our heart, that's how a man gets in, right?
Yep. Tugging on the heartstrings.
Or real. And so that in itself are two different needs, in a sense that it's a need for the man, for the woman to be one to take care of herself and to look beautiful and to stimulate him in that way. But it's a need for the woman, for the man to be able to talk on an emotional, honest level and to learn to connect on that level. And that's what creates sexual stimulation for both of them. But they're typically different.
Yeah.
They're different. But I need to know that it's different.
Yeah. Yeah, because obviously as guys, you think, I mean, again, it's kind of just goes back to our approach, which is more just kind of you go, you take, you know, and you're not really courting anymore as much as you used to in the same way. And I feel like, obviously, in the first 6 months, everybody's just, hunky-dory. Everybody can't get enough sex, first year even. And after that honeymoon phase, that's kind of when people start to set in. You start to see, the actual factors that I think come into a successful relationship start to really start to show up like around probably the year, 2 years worth, where it's like, okay, now you got to start, approaching it from a different angle. You can't just, you're not on cloud nine anymore. So that's kind of where this starts to become a lot more relevant, I think. And I think a lot of people probably struggle for the first 5 to 10 years or whatever the case may be. And again, it comes down to this awareness factor. Cause like even for myself, where I am kind of aware of it, putting it into practice is a whole different monster, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing too, especially, I mean, I'm often not real popular when we start talking about relationship and sex and developing, because I have somewhat of a traditional type view, because I believe that sex is one of the most intimate and one of the most personal encounters that we can have with another person.
Yeah.
And so in order to go to that level with someone else, you really need to have a track record with them to where there's been there needs to be a certain level of commitment. There needs to be a certain level of trust. There needs to be a certain level of bonding on all the other levels in order for that level to become okay. And that if you do it before then you're basically taking a great risk, because you can be deeply hurt if you are stripping yourself before someone that you don't know is a psychotic person. It's just, never.
Real world situation, but yeah, it happens all the time.
So I say before you have to develop the relationship to certain levels before you show them your privates. I'll say you can see it in a different analogy. I said, if I meet somebody, I might leave $1 on my table, and if they steal the $1, it's not big of a deal. But why would I ever meet somebody, the first time I meet them, I give access to my bank account that has $2 million?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Be respectful of it, but they may rob me clean. And so in the same way, I say, well, our sexual relationship it's not just a physical level. There's an emotional level. There's a psychological level. There's a spiritual level. And it's a very, very intimate and personal act. You can try to keep it on a physical level, but that other stuff gets exchanged. And so all of a sudden, look, it just becomes, it becomes a great risk.
Yeah.
It becomes a great risk. So anyway, it's just kind of an interesting aside. But in terms of relationship, I always tell my women, I say, you want a man? They say, yeah, I want a man. I want you to go. I said, don't give it up. I said, if you give it up, then they'll enjoy you for a day, but they're not going to marry you.
There's truth in that. Yeah.
If you don't, and you save yourself, and you strong, that's the ones they want to marry.
Yeah. Oh, it is true, because it's kind of like you don't want to ride a town bicycle. So then you end up with the town bicycle, and everybody's just like, oh, this guy, I can't believe he married that girl. It's unfortunately, because I do feel that sometimes there's certain girls that act out and they got deep psychological issues and all that kind of stuff as well. And I understand that. However, it's kind of funny to me too that usually the people that are passing the most judgment on these women are other women. Like, it's kind of ironic in that sense, because sometimes it almost seems like, because women are the one that are quick to judge these girls and say, like, I can't believe, XYZ ended up with her, she's a complete slut and all that. And as a guy, you're 100% correct. And it's kind of weird because we live in a society and where, like, I mean, you got women showing off their buttholes for $3. Sign up to OnlyFans. And it's unbelievable to me because I got a 13-year-old son and I tell him all the time, like, whatever you do, like, don't go to those websites, like, don't do it. Like, all that stuff is just, I honestly feel like it's a big trap. And I think it's something set up to just basically keep you in a addictive loop, because that's how they make their money, amongst other things. I think the spiritual aspect of it too. Like, I firmly do believe, like, I think that's one of the devil's most, I think it's probably one of the most powerful weapons he uses against us, because legit, there's so many young kids that are addicted to it, and so many kids that unfortunately are signing up and they're creating these almost cyber psychological relationship with these people that they've never met in their lives.
Yeah.
And it's kind of unfortunate because I do feel like it tears at the moral fabric of society. But the one thing that kind of came to mind now that, all that rant's done is, do you think that even though a woman's been with like hundreds of partners per se, like let's say she was somebody that was like a porn star or something like that, had tons of partners, the guy too, they were extremely promiscuous, is a couple like this or people like this still able to be successful in their marriages?
I think they could be, but it would take a lot of work. In a sense that, I look at things spiritually too, and there's a truth in the Judeo-Christian tradition that says when two people have sex, they become one. Mm-hmm. There's an at-one-ment that occurs on a lot of different levels that we don't fully understand.
Sure.
And so there's a lot impacted in that very act. That's why it needs to be sacred, and it needs to be in a very sacred and committed process in my own eyes. But I think that if you have lots and lots and lots of partners, then on some level, when you make a commitment to a person, you're actually bringing those previous partners into the relationship on some level. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there needs to be work that has to be done on a lot of different levels to create separation from that, in a weird way. So there's almost like a healing process that would need to occur, which can occur, but you have to intentionally work with it to almost, it sounds weird, but what's the process of healing that can occur that we re-virginize ourselves? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like purify. It's like, I don't think anything's beyond being redeemed and purified. Mm-hmm. I think it may take more work depending on how far down the scale one has gone.
Yeah.
Right? So I would never say that they couldn't work, but I would say it would need to be attended to and would need to have some work done. And it's just, there's a lot of not only spiritual, but psychological implications, emotional implications, because at that point, if you've had multiple partners, sex has been, there's a different definition of sex than simply an exclusive act between two people that love each other, that's saved for this individual. Because I've been working with a different belief system for a number of years. So what would it take to change that belief system in order for it to work for us? There would have to be some shifting,
Yeah, big time. And it's interesting because even though, like, I lean heavily to the traditional side of sex, I feel like it is something holy. It is something that, you shouldn't be out there constantly doing. But that being said, I've talked to a lot of people who have just a completely different outlook on it. And it seems like I had one guy on the show who told me that he was married to a sexologist and she liked to swing. And I'm like, that didn't seem like it was going to work out. And I started telling my wife about it. I'm like, I don't know. Like, there's something about that just, it doesn't seem like it ever works out in the end. And it didn't, because the guy ended up divorced. And I even asked him, I'm like, well, would you end up being in an open relationship again? And he told me, he's like, he's like, I could, but I don't really want to. And I'm like, well, why not? And he's like, my perspective has changed. And to your point, you said the same thing. It almost seems like you got to make that shift in perspective in order for it to actually be something that you start to basically change in your life, right? Because I
Yeah.
feel like, just that physical exchange, like there's more to it, obviously, than that. And I don't feel like a swinger or these people that, have the most hedonistic lifestyles. And it seems like they're kind of unhappy too, which is something that I'm like, well, you know what? For me, sex is fun with my wife. I enjoy it. It's a great time. But if I was out there living that hedonistic lifestyle, it almost seems like you just burn out your dopamine. You don't really feel anything, and you just can't get enough. It almost seems like people fall into this weird addictive trap. It seems.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with you. It does fit much more in an addictive cycle than it does an authentic expression of love that is mutually fulfilling. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it almost seems like, hey, you know what? Let's just play around. But the weird thing is too, it's like these people are like in 40s, 50s. I'm like, I figure it would have been like, okay, like maybe not, but some of them are just into some of these weird fetishes that I I have them on the show and I ask them about this and how does it actually work out for you? Does it fulfill you? And some of them talk about mindset and that kind of approach to it. But at the same time, I'm just like, well, I don't really feel like it ever really works out in the end if what you want is
Mm.
a successful marriage.
Yeah. I had an interesting approach. My son just got married. He's 25 years old. And
Congrats.
yeah, he's just a good kid. But I had an interesting, when he got to the age of the teenage years and we had to deal with the pornography issues and stuff,
Yeah.
and really talking about, just sexual activity. What I tried to do, which I think it was successful, was I I was trying to help him say yes to purity as
Mhm.
opposed to no to sex.
Wow.
It's a big difference.
Yeah,
In the
you changed the
sense
paradigm.
Yeah, because I was saying, look, this is one of the greatest gifts that God has given you. And in order for you to experience the heightened and supreme level of this gift, it's the closest thing to heaven on this side of heaven. And it's a gift, and you only get to experience the maximum extent of that in the sacred uh relationship of a married couple that is committed to each other. And
Yeah.
then you can connect on all levels, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, sexually, and you get to experience the supremeness of it. And so that's why you fight to maintain purity.
Hmm.
And so it's because it's a lot easier to have a big yes than it is to say a bunch of no's,
Yeah.
right? If you wanted to be a track star and you had a track meet tomorrow and your goal was to finish first and you wanted to be first in state, it's a lot easier for you to say no to hanging out with the guys the night before and drinking, right? And
Mhm.
running the town. No, you say, I'm saying yes to my performance tomorrow. So it's easy to say no to them, even though you would have liked to do that to hang out with the guys. If you have a big yes, it's easy to say no to the other stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So what I tried to teach him is like, this is a big yes. Save yourself for your wife and do this so you can experience the supreme, so that when you're tempted by pornography, or tempted by this encounter, or tempted by this girl, tempted by this, you can say no because you have a big yes and you know why you're saying yes. I find that most kids that are very promiscuous with kids with sex and pornography is they don't have any idea of a big yes.
Yeah.
So why would I say yes to something that's pleasurable, say no to something that's pleasurable if I don't have a big yes? And I think that that's culturally, that's what we've lost some, is the big yes around sexual behavior. Therefore, it's hard to say no to a lot of the things that are actually pleasurable because, look, it doesn't matter. If your sexual organs are stimulated, you're going to feel pleasure. It doesn't matter if it's a man, a woman, a dog. I mean, it doesn't. And so you're going to feel pleasure. It's a pleasurable thing. So how do you make it bigger than just the act of feeling pleasure? Because there's no doubt it's there. I need to have and understand the big yes on all the different levels.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that. I think that's the highest form of experience, the peak of sexual activity is within a committed, long-lasting relationship. So that's my own belief anyway.
No, I agree with that. And I kind of feel as though a lot of traditional values are kind of making a resurgence amongst men, because a lot of people are just kind of growing tired. And a lot of people young kids are kind of seeing through the muck and mire and what kind of exists in our society. And it's interesting to me that even the young kids are like, I'm not into this, man. Like, I want that old school traditional feel to it, man. Like, I want to farm. I want 4 kids. I want to kick it old school. I'm like, there's something within humanity, I feel, that's kind of like telling us to go back to our roots, kind of like this modern lifestyle isn't all that it's cracked up to be. Or I guess more than anything, the projection that we kind of see on TV or in the media, it's not that great. And anybody that's lived it will tell you, well, it's kind of ironic because you go, you live it, and then you end up saying like, you know what, I'd rather just go traditional. A lot of the times, because there's only so much you can do and only so many people you can do it with. And next thing you know, you're just like, you're craving something more than that. And that's kind of where I kind of feel like hedonism always kind of just leaves you empty. And eventually, the older you get, the more you realize, like, yeah, this hedonistic lifestyle does not serve me whatsoever. So why would I continue down that road? And the older you get, the more you see it, the more often you see it, and the more you realize that, to your point, you're better off just hanging on for that big yes that can steer your life in the best direction possible. And it kind of builds that solid foundation that I think is missing for so many young men, which is why you start to see you see a lot of these movements taking place, kind of like no fap and no porn and abstinence. And it's kind of weird because it's counterculture to be traditional. Like a couple of years ago, it was just like, who wants to do that? That's the fringe. Whereas now it's like, no, man, I'm part of the no fap community, or I don't do that, or I don't indulge in those choices. So it's interesting, as you say that, I feel more and more young men are kind of going down that road.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice.
And the other thing that I wanted to touch on is that we had touched on some of the specific needs. What are some of the common wants that you hear from women as well? Because we talked about the needs, I understand that consciously, and I'm like, I got that one written down and I got to take notes for later. But what are some of the other wants that you hear a lot of women say that, if you could go above and beyond, this would put them at an A+ versus a C-?
That's good. I find another really strong, well, probably need or want, it would be in a one, is what I would say family commitment. And what I mean by family commitment is for the man to be desiring to be involved in the family, to want to do things together with the children, to do things with her, to invest time and energy in really being committed to the family. And what I mean by that is sometimes as men, we have our spouses, but we spend so much time playing golf with the other guys, hunting, being out of the house, hanging out in the bar, or doing whatever. Not that any of those things are wrong, but what I'm saying is that it's a real, as opposed to they have the family system and the man's on the outside, it's real important for the woman is for the man to really be inside, like wanting to do something as a family unit, and that moves men to another level. But I do think that is a natural result of emotional maturity, because I think that, and we touched on it last time, that many of us get stuck in emotional adolescence. And so when we get stuck in emotional adolescence and we're 40 years old, we're still doing all the things of adolescence. We're hanging out with the guys. We playing the field a little bit. We're doing our own thing. We're in with the fellas. I mean, that's adolescent stuff.
Yeah.
But when we mature into manhood, we want to be protectors of our home.
Yeah.
We want to be involved with our kids. We want to be bonded and connected to our spouses. We want to set up our staff right in the middle of the home.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's a natural byproduct of just really moving into a place of emotional maturity. But if we're stuck in those earliest stages, we're trying to be a husband, but we're doing all the things of an adolescent.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see it, and it's kind of sad, if anything, because I will see guys that are in like, late 40s now, and they're acting like teenagers. I'm like, you bought new Jordans and you're out here trying to be cool. I don't understand it, I guess. But it does make sense that some dudes, and I guess they end up on your doorstep again. And it's like, I need to work on things. And it almost seems as though, I don't know, maybe it's a lack of understanding or a lack of a proper role model. Would you say, what are the biggest contributing factors you think to guys being or having such low emotional EQ, I guess?
Yeah, that's really a good question. I think there's a number of things. I think that role models are certainly part of it. I think that emotional maturity just doesn't come real easy to men. It comes easier to women because it's a lot more encouraged. And so just the whole idea of being able to manage our emotions, to express our emotions, to grieve, to live in our heart, all those things, we have to really work on that because that's not part of the curriculum of growing up oftentimes.
Yeah.
And so, and also see the blessing of older men is very, very important. And I think to make sure we have good mentors. I heard someone say you can write down the 5 closest men to you that are around you, and that's more than likely where you're going to be in the next year or two, in the sense that that's where you're going. And so I think I look back at my journey that some of the leaps in maturity have come because I've availed myself to be mentored and to be by other men, and some very strong figures that had something to impart into me. And so I think that that's part of it. And, there was a generation where a lot of fathers saw themselves as providers, but not really, but emotionally somewhat absent from their family systems. And then even today, there's just, because of the high rates of divorce, there's a lot of young men that grow up without fathers. They grow up without strong male figures in their lives that are encouraging and coaching and teaching and disciplining them to move to another level. So I think it's a combination of the breakdown in the family system. It's a real hard job when single moms raise up children and they're trying to be both mom and dad, and they're trying to nurture and love, but kick them in the butt at the same time and say, get out the nest, but stay in the nest, but get out the nest. It's just a hard position. I think there's a healthy tension that occurs when you have a strong husband and wife that are working together, that the mom is just really keeping the chick in the nest, and the dad saying, no, it's time to fly. I'm pushing. And there's a healthy tension. I can remember, even when my son was young, he wants to go play on the swing, and the swing looks a little feeble and he might fall off. And I'm like, let him go on and he'll fall off. He'll learn. My wife's like, no, he's not ready to go on the swing. He can hurt himself. No, get on that swing, boy. And there's this healthy tension, right, of keeping them protected but pushing them out. And I think that's what happens in a family system that's intact, that you have that dynamic going on. And I think it's a real injustice for women or for men that are raising children, is that when you're primarily, that's your job and you need to do both of those simultaneously. I think it's really hard. It's a real tall task. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but if you're in that case, you need to try to find ways to get other people to work with to help some of those roles. So if you're a woman and you have a son and he's in a sport and has some good coaches, that's a good thing, because the coaches start being that role of helping them grow up, or in different activities, you find mentors.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, I don't know the exact statistics, but it seemed pretty bad as far as like divorce rates and all that, and how high things have climbed up. And it seems like it's become kind of just, I guess, the norm almost at this point, like the amount of people that get divorced. But I kind of feel like community has a lot to do with it, because at my son's school, like for the most part, everybody is together. There's a couple divorcees there here and there, but it's a lot lower. So I kind of feel like community and, where you are at kind of in society also plays into that. But it's tough to see that it's so common among so many different couples, which is something that, as you were talking about that, I kind of was thinking in my head, how many people have come to you on the rink of a divorce and you've successfully kind of coached and helped them get back together? And what did that kind of look like at the onset to their progression and them succeeding?
Yeah. Well, when I have both parties are willing and wanting to work on this, we probably have close to 100%.
Wow.
In reconciliation. The problem occurs when one partner comes in and they're really ambitious and the other one has one foot in the box and one out the box for whatever reason. Then you're trying to do couples work, but they're really wanting something else. So sometimes that doesn't get revealed except over time. Yeah. But I always tell couples when they come in, the first thing I say is, look, obviously you're upset with each other and you're not getting along, or you wouldn't be here. But if we're going to work together, I need you to make a commitment to being in the box. Well, what do you mean in the box? I mean, you all are committed to each other. There's no outside relationship. There's no leaving the relationship for the period of time that we designate. That there's no back door, because we have to set a container. Because if one's in the box and the other one's halfway out and things get a little heated, they're just walking. And so they say, well, I don't know if I can make that commitment. I say, well, I don't know that I can make a commitment to help you in marriage counseling. and so I say, what kind of commitment can you make to be in the box? Can you give me a month? Or can you give me 3 months? 3 months in a day, you can leave the relationship. But can you give me 3 months and be in the box? Because if we're going to have any hope at marriage counseling, I need y'all both in the box. So that's the first thing that I do, is I have them make a commitment, and oftentimes they will, and it might be for just a month. Okay, I'll make it, and then I start going to work, and then once we start to work, I try to feel out. I ask 3 sets of questions. One of them is if you were to come in, I would say, CJ, when you first met your wife, what is it that you loved about her? Tell me.
Ooh.
And I have you name it. I loved how kind she was, how sweet, how beautiful, or whatever. And then I asked the spouse, what did you love about CJ when you first met him? So I like to rekindle the original flame. And then the second question I ask them is, what are 3 things that you do when you're stressed out or upset to help you cope that you would consider unhealthy? When I'm upset, I scream. I'm upset, I drink. When I'm upset, I withdraw. Okay. Then I'll ask her the same thing. What are 3 things you do when you're upset? I love the F-bomb. I curse them out. The second one is, whatever it is.
Whatever it might be.
I complain till I get his attention, or I shut them out, kind of thing, whatever they are. So then those are their coping behaviors. So I have that. And then the third question I ask, which is really an interesting question. I say, what are 3 experiences, CJ, any time in your life that have been difficult for you that you've had to overcome? And so you would have to reflect, and you might say, well, when I was 8, my parents divorced and it was really painful. When I was 15, I was, wanted to be on the baseball team and I got cut and it was devastating for me. When I was, 25, I had this girlfriend. She left me for another man and the man happened to be a good friend of mine or whatever. It's like what are the 3 experiences? Then I have them both say that. Inevitably, the pain of one of those 3 experiences or all of them are intertwined with the problems that they're having. So say that I was betrayed by a woman because I and she went off with a man that I knew. And that was a very, very painful thing, and I haven't resolved it. But part of my fights with my wife now is that I'm always accusing her of wanting to leave me and go mess with somebody else, and I'm extremely jealous. Well, is that about right now, or is that about this unresolved issue that I had that was devastating, and I'm trying to control her so that this doesn't happen again?
Yeah.
And she's like, he won't even let me go to the grocery store with on me, whatever. But oftentimes the issues that they're having now are reacting to past wounds that haven't been resolved. So I get that information, and then I start working with showing them how their coping behaviors are connected to their wounds and who they really are. And we start working with that. And then I'll facilitate having them apologize for their coping behaviors that have been self-destructive or being destructive. I have them starting to forgive and then start empowering them, their true self or who they really are, how to manage these other voices. And that's really, the concept that we have in our book, A Roadmap to the Soul, is all about those 3 parts and how to manage that. And that's what we start to do. And as they start to do that, I have them do their work in front of each other. So when she's talking about her devastation of when this happened in her life and her parents were divorced and this and that, and I'll say, look at your wife. What do you see? Oh, she's hurting. She's in a lot of pain. I didn't really know that it impacted her that much. And it starts to create this connection and compassion. And so I have them do their emotional work in front of each other, and it develops compassion and love. And that starts to reactivate the relationship.
Yeah. I mean, so much more to unpack. It seems like, we just kind of keep scratching at the surface, it seems, because there's only so many levels to it. It seems as though it's simple, and you do simplify it. Dr. Sunseri, man, you do a great job at simplifying it. However, these concepts seem as though it's like, oh, I figured that out, only to realize it gets more intricate. And there's different things to pull at it, and you can just keep it extrapolating more and more things from it. But I really value your time. I value the fact that you explain it to us in a way that makes perfect sense and in a way that's extremely simple and elegant, which is one of those things that I like as far as solutions go. Because if you're able to explain a very, very complicated subject such as this, and you're able to do it in a way that's extremely simple, extremely elegant, and easy for us to follow, I know you're a master at it, man. So before you go anywhere, let us know your contact information. And of course, all the links are always going to be in the description. But let us know where we can contact you if anybody needs, to work on their relationship or work on their marriage. Where can they find you?
Yeah, visit me at ihaveavoice.com and look up our book, A Roadmap to the Soul. We have a link for that. You'll really love that. If you're really ambitious and want to do life coaching with my wife and I, we have a whole program called Transform You, and it's for individuals and couples. And so you get all that information at ihaveavoice.com.
Perfect. And the links are always going to be in the description. Dr. Dean Sunseri, a pleasure once again. Probably have you on again in the near future because, like I said, there's always more to pull from.
Yeah, it's a great conversation, man. I love the work that you're doing.
Hey, man, I respect you. I'm very, very thankful. On that note, guys, we'll see you guys in the next episode.